I never thought I'd be the type of person to destroy a family. Hell, I never thought I'd be the type of person to even question the perfect life I'd built around myself. But sometimes, the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and it forces you to confront truths that would be better left buried 6 feet underground. My name is Sarah, and for 32 years, I believed I was living the American dream. Perfect husband, perfect house in the suburbs, perfect job as a marketing executive, and most importantly, the perfect relationship with my sister Emma. We were those sisters people envied, best friends since childhood, each other's maids of honor, practically inseparable. Our kids played together every weekend, our husbands golfed together, and we had family dinners every Sunday without fail. But perfection, I've learned, is just an elaborate mask that reality wears until it decides to rip itself off and show you the monster underneath. It started 3 months ago with something so mundane, so ordinary, that I almost dismissed it entirely. I was doing laundry, because apparently even successful marketing executives still have to deal with dirty socks, when I found a receipt in my husband David's pants pocket. Now, normally I wouldn't have given it a second thought. David travels for work frequently, and random receipts are part of the territory. But this one was different. It was from a hotel in downtown Atlanta, dated for last Tuesday. The same Tuesday David had told me he was in Phoenix for a client meeting. The same Tuesday I had spent alone, missing him, ordering Thai food for one and binge-watching Netflix like the devoted wife I thought I was. My hands started shaking as I stared at that piece of paper. There had to be an explanation, right? Maybe it was an old receipt from a previous trip. Maybe he had gotten confused about the dates. Maybe I was the one misremembering. But deep down, in that place where women's intuition lives and thrives, I knew something was terribly wrong. I sat on our bed, the bed we'd shared for 8 years of marriage, and tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. David loved me. He told me every morning before he left for work and every night before we went to sleep. He brought me coffee in bed on Sundays and remembered every anniversary of every milestone in our relationship. He was the man who had held my hand through my mother's cancer treatment and had cried with me when we lost our first pregnancy. But that receipt burned in my hand like evidence of a crime I wasn't ready to acknowledge. So I did what any rational person would do. I started investigating my own husband like he was a suspect in a murder case. I began paying attention to details I had previously ignored. The way he tilted his phone away from me when texting. The new cologne he'd started wearing that smelled expensive and unfamiliar. The gym membership he'd suddenly renewed after years of complaining about his lack of motivation to work out. The late nights at the office that had become more frequent, more convenient. For 2 weeks, I gathered evidence like a detective building a case. Credit card statements that didn't match his travel itineraries. Phone bills showing calls to a number I didn't recognize. A sudden interest in doing his own laundry that he'd never shown in our entire relationship. But the real breakthrough came when I decided to follow him. I know how that sounds. I know it makes me seem like some kind of unhinged stalker wife from a Lifetime movie. But when you've built your entire identity around being part of a perfect couple, the possibility that it's all been a lie does things to your sanity that you can't prepare for. It was a Thursday evening, and David had told me he was going to a work dinner with potential clients. Nothing unusual there. He'd done it dozens of times before. But instead of settling in with a glass of wine and my usual Netflix queue, I got in my car and followed him. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the radio as I watched him pull into the parking lot of Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I parked across the street and waited, telling myself that any minute now I would see him walking in with a group of businessmen in suits, and I could go home feeling foolish but relieved. Instead, I watched my husband of 8 years walk into that restaurant holding hands with my sister Emma. The world didn't just stop. It imploded. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Every heartbeat felt like a physical assault on my chest. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, watching through the restaurant's windows as my husband and my sister sat across from each other at an intimate table for 2. They weren't just talking business. They weren't just catching up as in-laws. David reached across the table and touched Emma's face with the same gentle gesture he used to comfort me when I was upset. Emma leaned into his touch the way a woman leans into the man she loves. And then they kissed. Not a friendly peck. Not an accidental moment of confusion. A deep, passionate kiss that spoke of familiarity, of longing, of a relationship that had been going on for much longer than a single evening. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember walking into the house or sitting down on the couch. The next thing I was aware of was David coming through the front door at 11:30, loosening his tie and asking me how my evening had been. "Fine," I heard myself say, my voice sounding like it was coming from somewhere very far away. "How was your client dinner?" "Boring as usual," he replied, kissing the top of my head before heading upstairs to shower. "You know how these things are. Same conversations, same complaints about the market." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at his lying face. I wanted to demand he tell me the truth right then and there. Instead, I sat on our couch, in our living room, surrounded by photos of our perfect life together, and felt something inside me die. That night, as David slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and trying to process the magnitude of what I had discovered. This wasn't just adultery. This was betrayal on a level so profound it redefined my understanding of the word. My husband and my sister. The two people I trusted most in the world. The two people who were supposed to love and protect me above all others. How long had it been going on? How many family dinners had I sat through, watching them interact, completely oblivious to what was happening right in front of me? How many times had Emma hugged me goodbye while the taste of my husband was still on her lips? How many times had David told me he loved me while his heart belonged to someone else? The questions multiplied in my mind like cancer cells, each one more painful than the last. Over the next few days, I moved through my life like a ghost haunting my own existence. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, made conversation, all while feeling like I was watching someone else live my life. David didn't seem to notice any change in me, which somehow made everything worse. Was I really so easy to deceive? Had I become so predictable, so comfortable, that he could carry on an affair with my own sister without even worrying about getting caught? But Emma was different. When she called on Saturday morning to confirm our usual shopping trip, there was something in her voice that hadn't been there before. A nervousness, a forced casualness that set my teeth on edge. "Sarah, you sound tired. Are you feeling okay?" she asked, and I wondered if she was fishing for information or if she was genuinely concerned about the sister she was betraying. "I'm fine," I lied, just like she had been lying to me for God knows how long. "Just work stress." "Well, maybe we should skip shopping today. You should rest." Was she trying to get out of seeing me? Was the guilt finally eating at her conscience? Or did she have plans to see David? "No, let's go," I insisted. I could use the distraction. So there I was, 3 hours later, sitting across from my sister at our favorite cafe, watching her pick at her salad and avoid eye contact, knowing that this woman who had shared every secret of my childhood was now keeping the biggest secret of all. "So how's David?" she asked, and I swear to God she actually blushed. "He's fine," I replied, studying her face for any crack in her mask. "Working a lot lately. You know how it is." "Yeah, Michael's been busy too," she said, referring to her own husband. "Sometimes I feel like I barely see him." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Emma was complaining about not seeing her husband while she was sleeping with mine. Did she tell David about these conversations? Did they laugh together about how clueless I was? That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. I was going to uncover every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of deception. And then I was going to destroy them both. I started with David's computer. While he was in the shower the next morning, I went through his email, his browser history, his saved documents. What I found made me physically sick. There were dozens of emails between them, dating back almost 2 years. 2 years. They had been carrying on this affair for 2 years while I had been playing the role of the happy wife and devoted sister. The early emails were cautious, apologetic. "This is wrong," Emma had written. "We can't do this to Sarah." But David had been persistent, romantic even. "I can't stop thinking about you," he'd replied. "What we have is real. Sarah doesn't have to know." As the emails progressed, the guilt seemed to fade and the passion intensified. They talked about meeting at hotels, about stolen moments when their spouses thought they were elsewhere. They made plans, shared fantasies, declared their love for each other in words that should have been mine. But the worst part was how they talked about me. Not with hatred or anger, but with pity. Poor Sarah. So naive, so trusting. Poor Sarah, who had no idea that her perfect life was built on lies. "She suspects nothing," David had written just 3 weeks ago. "Sometimes I think she's willfully blind to it." "Maybe we should tell her," Emma had replied. "This isn't fair to any of us." "Not yet," David had responded. "I'm not ready to give up what we have." I printed every email, every photo, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. Then I sat at David's desk, surrounded by the documentation of my husband's infidelity with my sister, and I planned my revenge. Some people might have confronted them immediately. Some people might have filed for divorce and cut all contact. But I'm not some people. I'm a marketing executive who specializes in long-term strategic planning, and I had just discovered that my entire life was a lie. I wasn't interested in a quick confrontation that would give them a chance to explain, to apologize, to somehow make this my fault. I wanted them to suffer the way I was suffering. I wanted them to experience the same slow, creeping dread that had been eating away at my soul for weeks. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have your world destroyed by the people you trusted most. So I began to play the long game. First, I started leaving subtle hints that I was becoming suspicious. A casual question about David's travel schedule that didn't quite match his stories. A comment about how Emma seemed different lately, more distant. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, just enough to plant seeds of worry in their guilty minds. I watched them squirm at family dinners, saw the nervous glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. Emma started overcompensating, bringing me flowers just because and calling more frequently to check on me. David became more attentive at home, more romantic, as if his increased affection could somehow balance out his betrayal. But I was just getting started. Next, I began to systematically dismantle the lies they had built their affair on. I created fake emergencies that would force David to cancel his supposed business trips. I invited Emma over for surprise visits when I knew she was supposed to be meeting David. I watched them scramble to cover their tracks, to find new ways to be together, to maintain the elaborate deception they had created. The stress was eating away at them. Emma lost weight and developed dark circles under her eyes. David started drinking more, snapping at me over minor things, clearly feeling the pressure of trying to maintain his double life under increased scrutiny. But the real masterstroke came when I decided to involve their spouses indirectly. I started befriending Michael, Emma's husband, more actively. I invited him over to watch football games with David, organized double dates, created more opportunities for the 4 of us to spend time together.
Michael was a good man, honest, loyal, completely devoted to Emma. Watching him talk about his wife with such love and pride while knowing what she was doing behind his back was almost as painful as my own betrayal. But it served my purpose. The more time we all spent together, the more uncomfortable Emma and David became, the more difficult it became for them to maintain their facade. The breaking point came 6 weeks into my campaign of psychological warfare. We were all having dinner at Emma and Michael's house. one of our regular family gatherings that now felt like elaborate theater productions. David was telling a story about a client meeting in Chicago, embellishing details about the restaurant where they had dinner, the hotel where he had stayed. But I knew he had never been to Chicago that week. I knew because I had followed him to another hotel across town, where he had spent 3 days with Emma while Michael was visiting his sick mother in Florida. "That's interesting," I said casually, cutting into my steak. "I could have sworn you told me that client was based in Denver." David's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Emma's face went pale. Michael continued eating, oblivious to the tension that had suddenly filled the room. "No, definitely Chicago," David replied, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I've been working with them for months now." "Huh," I mused, taking a sip of wine. "My mistake. I guess I'm getting confused with all your travel lately." "Emma, didn't you say you were thinking about visiting Chicago? You should ask David for restaurant recommendations." The look that passed between them was pure panic. Emma managed to stammer something about not having firm travel plans, while David suddenly became very interested in his dinner plate. That night, David was quiet on the drive home. Too quiet. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much danger he was in. "Is everything okay?" I asked, playing the concerned wife to perfection. "You seem distracted." "Just work stuff," he replied, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. When we got home, he immediately went to his computer. I pretended to go upstairs to get ready for bed, but instead I crept back down and watched from the doorway as he frantically deleted emails and cleared his browser history. Too little, too late. I had already copied everything months ago. The next morning, Emma called while David was in the shower. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said, and her voice was shaking. "About what?" I asked innocently. "You know what? Please don't play games with me. I can't take this anymore." "I don't know what you're talking about, Emma. Are you feeling okay? You've seemed really stressed lately." There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, she was crying. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen. It just did, and now I don't know how to stop it." Stop. And there it was. The confession I had been waiting for. But instead of the satisfaction I had expected to feel, all I felt was a deep, crushing sadness. This was really happening. My marriage was really over. My relationship with my sister was really destroyed. "Stop what, Emma?" I asked quietly. "You know," she whispered. "With David. I know you know. I can see it in the way you look at us now." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been building toward for months. The moment when I would finally confront the two people who had destroyed my life. But when I opened my mouth to speak, what came out wasn't anger or accusations. It was something much more devastating. "How long?" I asked simply. 2 years, she replied, barely audible. "Sarah, I swear we never meant to hurt you. We tried to stop so many times, but we fell in love. Fell in love. As if that somehow made it better. As if their feelings justified the systematic destruction of my marriage and our family." "Does Michael know?" I asked. "No. God, no. Sarah, please don't tell him. It would kill him." The irony was stunning. She was worried about her husband finding out about her affair while talking to the sister she had been betraying for 2 years. "I have to go," I said. "David's getting out of the shower." "Sarah, wait." I hung up. When David came downstairs, fully dressed and ready for work, he found me sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a manila folder. "What's that?" he asked, pouring himself coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "Sit down," I said. He remained standing. "Sarah, I'm going to be late for—" "Sit down, David."
Something in my voice must have warned him that this wasn't a conversation he could postpone. He sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals, where we had planned our future together, where he had told me he loved me every morning for 8 years. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Printed emails, hotel receipts, credit card statements, photos I had taken of them together. A complete documentation of their affair. David's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally, resignation. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to realize that my entire marriage has been a lie. Long enough to understand that the man I thought I was married to doesn't exist." "Sarah, I can explain—" "No," I said firmly. "You can't. There is no explanation that makes this okay. There is no excuse that justifies what you've done. You don't get to explain away 2 years of betrayal." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I love you," he said desperately. "I know you don't believe that right now, but I do love you. What Emma and I have, it's complicated, but it doesn't change how I feel about you." "You love me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "David, you've been sleeping with my sister for 2 years. You've been lying to my face every single day. You've made me feel like I was going crazy when I started to suspect something was wrong. That's not love. I don't even know what to call it, but it's not love." "I never wanted you to find out," he said, as if that somehow made it better. "Of course you didn't, because that would have required you to actually face the consequences of your actions. It would have required you to choose between us instead of having us both." We sat in silence for a long moment. The evidence of his betrayal spread out between us like the remains of our marriage. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "I want you to pack a bag and get out," I said. "I want you to find somewhere else to stay while I figure out how to untangle 8 years of my life from yours. And I want you to stay away from Emma. Sarah, we can work through this. People survive affairs. We can go to counseling, we can—" This wasn't just an affair, David. This was a systematic betrayal involving my sister. This was 2 years of lies and manipulation. This was you making me doubt my own sanity when I started to suspect the truth. We can't work through this because the man I married wouldn't have done this to me in the first place. He started to argue, but I held up my hand to stop him. "There's something else you need to know," I said. "I'm going to tell Michael. He deserves to know what kind of woman he's married to, just like I deserve to know what kind of man I was married to." David went pale. "Sarah, please don't do that. Think about what you're doing to their kids. Think about their kids." I stood up, feeling anger surge through me for the first time since this conversation began. "Were you thinking about their kids when you were screwing their mother? Was Emma thinking about her children when she was betraying her husband? Don't you dare try to make me responsible for the consequences of your choices." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out," I said. "Pack whatever you need for a few days and get out. We'll figure out the rest later." David stood slowly, looking around our kitchen as if he were seeing it for the last time. Maybe he was. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am truly sorry." "So am I," I replied. "I'm sorry I wasted 8 years of my life believing in something that was never real." After he left, I sat in the empty house and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not relief, but a kind of quiet peace that comes from finally knowing the truth. My phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, but I didn't answer. She could wait. She had waited 2 years to tell me the truth. She could wait a little longer to hear what came next. Instead, I called Michael. "Hey, Sarah," he answered cheerfully. "What's up?" "Michael, I need to see you," I said. "There's something I have to tell you about Emma." The silence that followed told me he already knew, somewhere deep down, that his perfect world was about to crumble just like mine had. "I'll be right over," he said quietly. As I waited for Michael to arrive, I looked around the house that had been my home for 8 years. Everything looked the same. The photos on the walls, the furniture we had chosen together, the little touches that had made this place ours. But it all felt different now, tainted by the knowledge of what had been happening behind my back. I thought about the woman I had been 3 months ago, trusting, naive, completely secure in her perfect life. I almost envied her ignorance. But I wouldn't go back even if I could. Living a lie, no matter how comfortable, was no way to live at all. The truth had destroyed my marriage and my relationship with my sister, but it had also set me free. Free from a husband who could lie to my face for 2 years. Free from a sister who could betray me while pretending to love me. Free from a life built on deception and false promises. When Michael knocked on the door, I took a deep breath and prepared to help him find his own freedom, no matter how painful the truth might be. Because sometimes, destroying a family is the only way to save the people in it who deserve better.